Okay, good morning, everyone, or I think it's still morning. Welcome to the Insurance and Pharmaceuticals Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. We have three bills that we're going to be discussing today. And I think they probably will need continued discussion after this meeting. So just know that we are gathering information today. We are going to start with House Bill 583, Health Insurance, Podiatrist, Reimbursement for Infusion of Medication, sponsored by Delegate Cardin. Lisa, tell us what the bill does, and Delegate Cardin is here, right?
I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, great, thank you. So Lisa?
House Bill 583 requires an individual, group, or blank health insurance policy or contract that provides reimbursement for a service within the lawful scope of practice of a licensed podiatrist to provide for quarterly adjustments to reimbursement for the infusion of the medication. Adjustments must be made on the first day of January, April, July, and October annually. And Delegate Cardin also submitted an amendment that would apply the provisions of the bill to all types of infusions.
And that's all, I mean, even though it's a lot of words, that's what the amendment does, right? It just applies it to everything. Okay. Delegate Cardin, would you like to speak to the bill?
Thank you, Delegate Cullison. I did want to just mention that I think your committee or members of your committee clearly identified the issue, which is that there are times when insurance companies are not reimbursing at the rates that they are supposed to, maybe because of timing issues, maybe because it's intentional, maybe it's unintentional, it's just archaic methods of bookkeeping. But I think it was Delegate Johnson and maybe Delegate Hill, who's not on this subcommittee, but Delegate Johnson who asked whether it's okay to just retroactively reimburse at the correct amount, or send a reimbursement check if you paid too little, or request or take away money the next time if you paid too much based on the change in the schedule. And I think that's really the issue that would be that the way to handle it. And again, I would leave it up to the committee to figure it out, but why should these providers be paid less than they are supposed to based on what the reimbursements rates are that they have, that the insurance companies have agreed to? So that's basically, so I thought that question really set it out. So if you can figure out how to do that, then this becomes an issue that is resolved much more easily.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your input. Who would like to, is there somebody who would like to discuss this or has questions? And if you do, please use your raise hand function in reactions. Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the representatives were supposed to get the committee the answer on that. My question was, if you paid too little, do you then go back and reimburse them at the correct payment amount? I don't know if they've sent that to the committee or not yet. However, I did speak with several doctors since we had that hearing, and they have told me that no, they do not send the correct reimbursement amount, the difference later. And there was also by Mr. Celentano a statement that said they had no complaints. Well, the doctors I spoke with said they have complained to the MIA. However, the MIA says they do not have authority over Care First when it comes to retroactive reimbursements. So that's my input, and another reason why I see we need to make this bill, make sure we get this right.
Okay.
Because believe me, they have no problems coming after you if they overpay you.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Johnson. We're going to go to Mr. Celentano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will let my friend from colleague address, or my friend from Care First address the question specifically for her. But I will say thank you for the opportunity. I have checked with all the carriers, and it's my understanding from all of them, there is not a single carrier that will ever claw back if the rate goes down. So I just wanted to make sure that that is understood by the committee. Also, this, like we said at the hearing, is not really a issue of the payment, so to say, as it is a challenge that is presented by CMS. This is a federal fix. At the beginning of each quarter, and sometimes it's as little as a couple of days before that quarter, we are presented with the new reimbursement rates. These can be over 1,000 drugs, and it just comes over an Excel spreadsheet, and it has to be entered manually into the carrier's databases. It does not come over automated due to the nature of the files. So we are basically beholden to CMS. It's a labor-intensive process. It's not automated. So there is a lag in processing. But it is also my understanding that every carrier has that adjustment within a couple of weeks. Now, they do not go back and retroactively reimburse, but you get made whole over the course of the year. So it's just, if we're talking about setting a starting date, yes, they might lag for that 1 month, and they might miss that reimbursement for that portion. But throughout over the course of an entire year, the providers would be made whole. Just to talk about also, I wanted just to address the concerns. We have not seen complaints from the MIA on this from providers. And I had checked with Associate Commissioner Cooney, and I still have not heard any complaints in this space, because it might be that this one particular provider that brought the bill to the delegate might have had an issue, but he would be made true and made whole over the course of the year. And once again, I just want to reiterate, there is no clawback coming from any carrier in this space.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Ms. Rifkin.
So what Matt said is absolutely correct. And number one, this is not a care first issue. It applies to all carriers. All carriers have a lag. I think that's really important for you all to understand. And why is that? Because it's impossible for us not to have a lag. When CMS, we literally log on and start looking several weeks in advance for a PDF spreadsheet. And at times, it doesn't show up until a week before or several days before the start of a quarter. And we have to go line by line manually through over 1,000 drugs to try to determine, number one, was there an increase in that drug or a decrease in that drug? Or is it the same? And then we've got to look on all of our different fee schedules and try to find the match, put it into our system based on our fee schedules, and change it. It's impossible for it to be done on the quarter. Absolutely no one could get that work done in that short of time. It's a very time-intensive process. However, the doctors and the providers are paid in full because they are paid for a full 4 months. Once we can load them into our system, they get that rate for 4 months. So there's a lag, but they get paid for the 4 months. And then there's the next month, quarter. Again, we load it in, they get paid that CMS amount for 4 months. CMS does it again, we load it in, they get paid for 4 months. So at the end of the year, they are made whole. There is no, it's not like we're only paying them for 3 months, we're paying them for the full 4 months of the CMS rate. If we could fix this, we would. This is a problem with technology that we have no way of complying with. We also do not make any changes, plus or minus, during that the period where we haven't made the changes, because we will make them whole for 4 months. So we don't go back and look. Sometimes this is pennies. Literally pennies. This is extremely time intensive. And again, we would not be able to comply. And so I checked internally. We have not had any complaints internally at all. No one has raised this issue to us. They may have raised it to a delegate or a senator, but they have not come to us, to my knowledge. I checked with our folks who do this, and we've had no formal complaints. So I'm hoping that's because they are getting the 4 months of fees just with a slight lag. It's always adjusted. So I hope I've addressed your questions, Delegate Johnson. There's no going back and fixing because we feel like we've paid for the full 4 months each quarter.
So before I go to Delegate Johnson, I'd like to go to David Cooney from MIA. And Mr. Cooney, if you could just tell us if you have, if the MIA, I know because of the role that I'm serving now, that you frequently get complaints about reimbursement rates and timeliness and et cetera. Is this an issue that you have seen come to you?
Sure, thank you, Delegate. So this particular issue, no, it's not something we've seen. I can't say the way we track our complaints, we have certain codes, and we don't track every single type of complaint discreetly. So I can't say for sure we've never received a complaint on this issue, but it is not an issue to where any one of my staff recalls ever seeing this particular issue. Like you said, we certainly get complaints about reimbursement, but related to infusions. And specifically, when I looked at the information originally, it was the bill as drafted, which was specific to podiatrists. We certainly, no one ever remembered seeing a bill related to infusions for podiatrists. But even this issue in general, no one of my staff was aware of one. That's not to say we didn't receive one at some point in time, but it's certainly not an issue that comes up with any frequency that we're aware of.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooney. Okay, I'm gonna go to Delegate Bandari, and then to Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the amendment from this MPMA, Maryland Podiatric Medical Association, was which should provide proper reimbursement for infusion medication costs. They request the bill be amended to include all providers and ensure uniform insurance company. My question would be,
God bless you.
Right now, the delays in the increased reimbursement rate to increase the cost, it imposes solely on the provider for the first 30 days of each quarter, right? Is that correct?
Well, it does, except that a rate stays in place for a full 4 months. So it's not like they'll only get the rate for 3 months. Is that that's what I'm understanding from the carriers. So the rate only changes after 4 months, a full quarter of receiving that rate. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Delegate Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm clear how this process works. So, Deb, you said that it's impossible to, if you get the rate increase a week before it goes into effect, it's impossible to get that all straightened out in just that 1 week. So how long does it take you? And how much into that 4 months is it before they're getting paid the correct rate? And because you confuse me a little bit too, when you say, well, they're getting it for 4 months, but how much of that 4 months does it take you guys to get caught up and get that out there to where they could have turned in bills that they're getting paid the old rate on? And do they get the difference? Do they get that difference back?
Okay, let me, it could take, I believe what our contract says, because this is all done by contract, that they will be paid before 1 month. Like, we give ourselves a 1 month grace. That doesn't mean we don't pay earlier than 1 month, but it's by contract. So we put that in, so we have that ability. We have never not met that time frame that we provided in terms of a cushion. What I'm trying to say, rates on January 1, for example, go up and rates go down. It's not just that they're going up, but there will also be reimbursement rates that CMS makes a determination to reduce. We are not making a change. we're still paying, even in that lag, if it's 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, whatever it is, 4 weeks, some of those rates went down. They're still being paid the higher amount. Some of those rates went up and they're still paying what we were paying the month before. So again, we're not just, this is not about them not getting increases. We're also not changing the decreases that they should have gotten. I want to be clear about that. What we end up doing is once we can load it into our system and put it into our fee schedules, then we start paying at that time, which is always less than a month. And we keep, because you can imagine we got to do this again in April. It's going to take us time again in April. So there's going to be a lag in April. There's going to be a lag in May, June, whatever it is, September. So whatever happens in January, when we start paying, they're going to get that rate for the 4 solid months. Then when we rejigger it again, that rate will be there for 4 solid months. And we rejigger again, they get that rate for 4 solid months. So it's just a lag, but they will, so they win on some drugs, they lose on some drugs. And we're not paying them for a full 4 months at the CMS rate. I don't know how to, I hope that makes sense. They're getting the full 4 months. It's just a little bit late.
I get that you,
starting,
I get that you say, you know, that some they're going to win on, some they're going to lose on, but there's some they're going to win and lose on every 4 months, correct? So how do we know if they're coming out whole or not?
Because Delegate Johnson, the best way I can explain it is that it's the same, whatever they should have gotten for 4 months, they'll be getting for 4 months. It just might not be exactly on January 1.
And I want to ask again, Debbie. So if the rate went down, you're not taking back the money that you gave them. So if it was
Correct.
$1.05, let's just say it's $1.05 on April 1st, and on July or whenever the next change is, it's $1.
That's right.
You got a month there that overlaps, and you're not taking back the money.
That's correct.
For that month, right?
We are not doing any kind of review. We're just saying, as of this date, it's all in our system. We're going to start paying you. We never look to take money back or increase money. So they get whatever happened that, you know, in that little lag, we don't go back. And if you just think about this realistically, this is 4 times a year. That's what CMS does. It doesn't do it once a year. They do it 4 times a year. We would constantly be having to go back and review and change. It would be chaos. It's not like they do it once and we could say, oh, we're going to be late for a couple of weeks. We can go back and just look 1 time a year and make a change. They do their system quarterly, manually. So it's always going to, it's just a very difficult process, unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm going to take Ms. Robinson and Delegate Cardin again, and then we're going to wrap up the meeting.
I can take it, but
someone needs to mute.
If needed, that's the wrong one. You can
Delegate Tavares, can you mute, please?
Sorry.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll do my best not to repeat what you've already heard. I think I just want to say it a little bit more simply. So Kimberly Robinson on behalf of Cigna, we have a process very similar to what Ms. Rifkin has described. But just for the education of the community, what I also want to share is this is communicated, as Ms. Rifkin referred to, but I just want to point out it's explained in the contractual agreement. And the reason we do that is we want providers to understand what the timing is, that there is a practical barrier when we are going to be basing the rates on something the federal government does. They don't do it with the expectation that this is what private insurers are doing. They aren't concerned with what matters for us or the things that you're caring about how they deploy their rates, the timing, the fact that they don't even do it on a consistent day, right? That they do it quarterly, but even that you can't say we know on the 28th of every month, we're going to see those rates. That doesn't even happen because they're not doing it for our purposes. They're doing it for theirs. And so we do sort of have to sit and wait with bated breath for them to drop their rates. And then we have to go through the administrative process of getting them into the system, which is why our contracts say to providers, and we make sure they know upfront that the January 1 rate will take effect February 1. Because that gives the 4 weeks, because we're not just doing this for anyone. And I hear there's an amendment to spread this to more specialties. You've got to do this for, and we're not just doing this in drugs, we're doing this in procedures, we're doing this in various parts of the company, that you've got to get the rates, you've got to load the rates, and then you begin to pay the rates. And the reality is, I understand the idea that, well, they say the rate's effective January 1, and you don't pay it till February 1st. It's effective for their purposes. It's how Medicare is choosing to pay. For our purposes, our quarter is going to start on February 1st. And that's so that we can take advantage of their rate. It can be transparent to the provider because they know what it is, and it's transparent to the provider when we're going to begin to use it. I think what you're hearing, the anxiety you're hearing from the carrier community is that this is our standard in Maryland and across the country. It is not something that's ever been a point of controversy in our work with providers. I think it's a fairly well understood experience. And to try to automate this in a way that lets us go back the month, to be perfectly candid, knowing how little some of these rates change, it's going to be a very expensive fix for what, while important to the providers and why it's important that we keep them on the rolling quarter, becomes very difficult to automate. And we'll be doing it for this single space or the single state. And we're just asking that you try to understand why it's set up this way and allow us to maintain the system with the confidence that we do not claw back. We do not, ever adjust against. We're agnostic to the adjustment. If it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. We're following whichever way the rate moves. And that our goal is always that we are always, giving that full 3-month credit. Everybody keeps saying 4, but it's a quarter. So it's 4 times a year for 3 months that we're giving that full 3-month credit to that rate for our providers.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Cardin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, so I wanted to first correct that it is 3 months, every 3 months, not every 4 months, because that was and I wanted to also make sure that, because I know that there's a lot of information going in and out, but there was a complaint by at least one of my constituents with a response back from an MIA investigator. His name, the MIA investigator's name was Paul Meyer, on a complaint that was made. So I'm not saying that there are lots and lots of complaints, but certainly complaints are documented. The other thing that in my research I did, fees never go down. They never go down. If you can give us an example of one that did, that would be great. But from what I understand from the providers that I deal with, they never have gone down. So there's no clawback issue to have to deal with. I also want to make sure that you understand, this is mostly Deb because she's a friend, but all you guys, Kimberly as well. This isn't a Care First issue. This is just I'm trying to look at consistency across the board. If Care First happens to be an outlier that floats that month or waits a month, and others don't, and that might be an issue that we want to deal with, but this was never intended to be something that was just focused on you. So I hope you don't take that personally. That wasn't my goal. But the other thing is that it seems to me as if they would wait to make their claim to the insurance company, just wait the extra month, they would get the increased amount. So are you suggesting that they should just kind of hold off on making their claim for an extra month? It seems like that wouldn't be fair to anybody to do that. Because if other ones are figuring out how to do it and do it timely, I understand that you're saying that you're getting that for that full 3 months. But if it's always going up and never going down, then there is a month lag through 4 times a year where they're getting less by certain insurers than other insurers for the same procedure. And that seems to be an issue of parity and unfairness. So those are only things. CMS gives them the new fee 2 weeks in advance. If and you're saying it takes 6 weeks, that seems to me to be just something that we ought to be able to figure out and have a system that allows it to be done electronically and much faster. So that's me. And by the way, just so you know, this is for Delegate Bhandari. The amendment that I proposed just makes this for infusion medication across the board, not just for the podiatry folks. So if you're going to do it, you might want to think about do something, anything. You may want to think about doing it for everybody, only so that you don't then wind up having piecemeal that's coming in every year from different groups. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So you've opened a Pandora's box. So we're going to Delegate Tavares, please.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Unmute. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I know that we've been having some conversation. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything that's happening here because, you know, I hope I didn't get on here. No, I didn't get on late, but there were a couple of things happening on the outside. So make sure that Medicaid is changing its rates quarterly. So every 3 months, Medicaid is changing its rates, and therefore there will be a month delay, and we can't change that in terms of payment scale.
What we can't change is the way the information is delivered to the carriers. And right now, the information is delivered to the carriers in an Excel spreadsheet that includes up to 1,000 different pharmaceuticals. And so what the carriers are saying to us is that in that, 3 to 4 weeks that it takes them to literally process those 1,000, which includes the infusion drugs, is the month that may be the overlap month. So, and it's an overlap of the previous fee. So that's what they're telling us, and that we'd have no control at all over what CMS does. Boy, do I wish we did, but we don't. So,
okay, and CMS, just for clarification, CMS is just for my constructed development, just remind me what CMS is again, because I know we went through that before.
it's the federal government's negotiations around pharmaceuticals with respect to Medicare and Medicaid. Okay.
So, I mean, just the reason why is like, why is there such a frequent change? That was the question I had.
Okay, so that we're going to have to ask the federal government on. I want to move us along, and we'll it's all about pharmaceuticals. So, Delegate, and as longer you're on this committee, you will learn that there are lots of ins and outs on pharmaceuticals. Delegate Bhandari.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing Delegate Cardin, I wonder what impact does the current practice of like some insurance companies dealing increased reimbursement rates for the first 30 days of each quarter have on healthcare providers? And what happens when we use the regular calendar? Some of the career, they explain that, but I would love to hear from healthcare providers. What impact does they have?
Well, what we hear is what Delegate Cardin is bringing to us, which is there is that delay in payment, and they would like to see the rates adjusted on the quarter, as opposed to the lag of about a month is what they're doing. So, and it's not significant amounts of money, in the short term, but it is a difference. Mr. Celentano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification purposes, this is not a Care First alone issue. This is happening across the board for all carriers. It is not just Ms. Ripken, my good friend. Also, I just wanted for Delegate Cardin is that the providers have 180 days once they've performed a service to get us a claim. Carriers have 30 days to pay that claim. So there is a discrepancy in the timeline, so they could hold it if they wanted to, or they could do it in this short time frame. I also wanted to clarify, of those 1,000 or so drugs that we get every month from CMS, the subcommittee chair sort of pointed out that these are small increases and decreases. There are absolutely drugs that go down over those couple of months. And I think it's just for purposes of level setting, this is not a topic that has come up in the past in all my years working in the General Assembly. And I think it's because what Ms. Robinson had said so eloquently before, it is sort of built into the contracts, and the providers know exactly what is going to be going on here because of the, let's just say, inoperability of how CMS gets the drugs to the carriers. So thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Kim, are you going to have the last word here?
If you give me the last word, I'll take the last word, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say what Matt said, which was one, they absolutely do go up and down. There is no world in which, ironically, the federal government is actually infamous for lowering rates on all kinds of medical things. There's often a fight to try to freeze us at a particular level because of that. This is not in any way hostility to providers from carriers. This is carriers working to make the system effective. We are using the Medicare rates. We're respecting the fact that they do in fact change them quarterly. We aren't required to base our reimbursement on Medicare, but we think that it's a good benchmark, and we are attempting to follow their trend on purpose so that that is clear to providers. We do communicate clearly what the payment schedule is. So it's not as though we're doing this without their knowledge when they become part of the network, because again, we want them to understand how this is going to work. And the goal is not to try to figure out a way for providers to sort of game the system. The service date is always going to be the service date, whether they submit the claim on the first day or they on the 180th, as Matt just pointed out. It's really about creating systems that can be efficient, systems that can be transparent. And because we are relying on a third party who is essentially setting the rate, it's just it's an Excel spreadsheet how it comes to us, right? But it's a large computer system that has to be able to have this updated, to be able to know all the logic to apply it to the right claims for the right providers. And we're just asking that we want you to take into consideration the challenge from an operational perspective. There's a reason why this is the practice of every carrier across the country. And it's in no way singling out a drug or a provider type. It's just what's necessary to make it efficient. And we don't want to lose that efficiency, because I promise if we have to try to make this all work for January 1st, it's going to become a slower, clunkier process, because it will make the process fully manual for carriers to have to pull out any one set of drugs or services to make this make sense in that way. We roll it forward for the whole quarter. And so everyone experiences that rate for 3 months. It may just not align exactly to CMS's rate or window, but it's our window and it's the industry window. And we hope you take that into consideration. Thank you. Oh, and for Delegate Tavares, CMS stands for Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They are the federal agency that oversees both of those programs, and they set rates in those spaces, just so you can start to learn acronyms.
Thanks. I couldn't remember what the C stood for.
Yeah,
right.
no. I've heard of CMS before then. It's just that there's so many.
Delegate Johnson, last word.
Thank you,
We're
Madam
going to
Chair.
stop.
I know you say about 1,000 drugs every quarter. You get a list of them. Out of those, what's the approximation, a ballpark of? I know they don't all change. So a ballpark of about how many of those do change every quarter?
Well,
Anybody that can best answer.
I don't know that they have I'm going to step in here because my experience with pharmaceuticals and studying pharmaceuticals for the last 5 years is that literally the cost of drugs changes almost every day, which is why our pharmacists have issues. So I would say, it is the majority of drugs that are changing in terms of their rates. And it may be up and down small amounts. As a former pharmacist, I think, or as a pharmacist, you've seen that and you've experienced those constant churn in drug prices. So it's not inconsequential numbers of changes. Am I speaking truth, carriers? Okay. Okay, we will come back to this bill, but I want to move us along, and I was hoping to give the delegates time to eat before the committee hearing. I want to move, I'm going to jump to HB 1145. And because I know, because I think I have, we can move that more quickly. We're going to start. Lisa, will you tell us what 1145, which is health insurance hearing aids for adults coverage by Delegate Riley. Lisa, will you tell us what it does?
This bill requires carriers to provide coverage for all medically appropriate and necessary hearing aids for an adult covered under a policy or contract. Under the bill, carriers may limit the benefit to $1,400 per hearing aid for each hearing impaired ear every 36 months. An insured or enrollee may choose a hearing aid that is priced higher than the benefit limit and pay the difference in costs without financial or contractual penalty to the hearing aid provider. The bill does not prohibit carriers from providing coverage that is greater or more favorable. And Delegate Riley has offered 2 amendments. One of the amendments would include over-the-counter hearing aids to the definition of hearing aid. And the other one strikes the dollar amount for the limit per hearing aid.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Delegate Riley, would you like to speak to it? And especially to your amendments.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as you see the amendments, the first one she mentioned, that was a recommendation from the Attorney General. And also when I talked to Mr. Steffen, he seemed that, it was kind of minimal. But anyway, that one would be to add over-the-counter hearing aids for adult age, and make the definition clear in the bill to match the FDA definition that they just came up with recently. And then when I saw the fiscal note, the MIA has said that it was against federal law to have a dollar amount. So the second amendment was to remove the dollar amount from that. Then I proceeded to talk to Ben Steffen, talk to him personally. He was hoping to get a limited estimate for us today for subcommittee. But when I originally talked to him Friday, I didn't know it was today. But then we did let him know that it was, in subcommittee, but he said he wasn't sure if he'd have it. I haven't received anything. I don't know if the committee has, but he's working on that. And he did make a suggestion, which I would be open to, would be, possibly go ahead and add the over-the-counters at this time for the adults, with the limited estimate. And then if the limited estimate comes in like really high, to request that the commission does a broader study on what this, changing the policy would have the effect on the exchange, which I believe, Matt Celentano had mentioned in his letter of opposition to get that. So I will let them speak on that. I see the MIA here and also Matt, so I'll hear what they have to say.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. David Cooney, please.
Thank you, Delegate. I just, we did want to clarify a nuance about the annual limit. I think perhaps when the MIA provided information in our fiscal note and what ended up in the final fiscal note, some of the detail was lost in translation. So I just want to clarify that the annual limits would not be absolutely prohibited by federal law. As members of this subcommittee are aware, it gets pretty complicated with the ACA and the different markets like grandfathered, non-grandfathered, individual, small group, and large group. So essentially, in the large group market, in most situations, the annual limit would be prohibited, but the federal regulations actually allow large group carriers to select the state whose benchmark plan they're using to define what essential health benefits are. So it is possible for a Maryland carrier in the large group market to base the essential health benefits definition on a different state's benchmark plan. In that situation, the annual limit may not be prohibited because hearing aids are in Maryland's benchmark plan, but not necessarily in another state's benchmark plan. Additionally, individual grandfathered plans, the annual limit would be permissible. So it's not absolutely prohibited by federal regulations across the board. It's just for certain markets. And regardless of if the statute had the limit in there, the MIA would have the authority to prohibit that limit in the markets where the federal government does prohibit it. So it's certainly cleanest to just remove the limit, but we just want to make it clear that it's not absolutely prohibited by federal law.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Celentano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the work and the clarification from the MIA. I will say, I didn't know it would be possible, but I am actually more opposed to this bill with the amendment than I was prior. I'm sorry, Delegate Riley. I still think that this is the most appropriate place for this bill to go is for the MHCC to have a more broader and comprehensive analysis of what kind of impact it would have to premium. By including over-the-counter hearing aids, you're opening it up to a new world of spend potential that I am unclear how to even quantify. It's much broader than the original bill. You wouldn't even have to go to an audiologist to sort of get the note to go through the normal procedure to get your hearing aid. If you go out and you're going to a Walgreens and buying a hearing aid, you're opening it up to a broader section of the population that was originally sort of contemplated in this bill. As many of you know, carriers don't pay for that many things that are over the counter. There are only a couple of instances. One of which is the Plan B drug, another would be COVID tests, and that's sort of an extraordinary circumstance. To open it up to over-the-counter hearing aids could have potentially large cost impact, and we would really like to see before the committee would move forward with a bill like this, what the MHCC would sort of pass along to what would have the overall impact of premium in the future. I will just say, for context for folks on this committee, that carriers are already covering hearing aids to the previous level of finance that was discussed in the beginning contemplation of this bill, and they're going to continue to cover hearing aids, but opening it up to a world where anyone can go to a over-the-counter device without ever seeing a doctor for medical necessity is something that we think requires a little more attention.
So Matt, can you clarify who is offering that benefit now? Which markets are offering it?
Small and individual group markets already offer the hearing aids, and as you can see in the fiscal note, originally was contemplated for hearing aids for a minor child, but that age restriction was actually removed due to prohibitions on age discriminations in the Affordable Care Act.
Okay. So what I'd like to recommend is that we typically, whenever we are looking at increasing a benefit of in some way, we turn it over to MHCC to do a thorough analysis for a year, and they come back to us with a full analysis. The reason being, and I understand, Delegate Riley, where you were going. It's like, let's try it and see how it works. But there's a lot of risk in that, and risk in the insurance market, and risk in terms of, what people could expect. Because what if, in June, if it went into effect in May and people were expecting to be able to go buy a hearing aid over counter, and it didn't, and they couldn't because the premiums went up too much or something, or the potential cost would cause the premiums to be increased in the future, then I think it would be unsettling. So it's more, I think, judicious for us to study it. Delegate Bandari.
Yeah, thank you. I know we have a lot of work on this bill, but to Matthew, how does these, your company you represent, balance the potential cost increase of mandated benefits with the need to provide essential health services and protection for the policyholder? And how do you ensure that the evaluation process for proposed mandated benefits adequately consider the needs of all the resident, particularly those who may be most vulnerable or in need of specialized care?
Well, Delegate Bandari, I think that's a really important question. And I think that we have a state benchmark, the Essential Health Benefit Plan, that all carriers have to adhere to. We have about 50 mandated benefits in our insurance code that all carriers have to cover, which is a lot more than other states in the mandated benefit space. It is important to establish where we should be covering, and especially in vulnerable populations. But every time you added a mandated benefit, it does have cost impact on premium. And that's why we're so reluctant to move forward with benefits without having an analysis of what the cost of benefit would be to all the markets. And I think that's an important point in this space, and why I think before we move forward with something, and this is always a policy decision for the General Assembly, you guys can move forward right now, but I also believe that there is broader cost impact that we would like to know about before we make these kind of policy decisions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Delegate Riley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one question. I guess Matt could answer this. So basically, all the ones that were age where we stopped from minor children up to 18. So all of those particular insurances groups have now have adults.
Small and individual group market policy plans already cover the hearing aids. Yes, Delegate Riley.
Okay, so we have the adults in the grandfathered and the large group.
Large group is the place where the particular cost could pose problems.
Could go high, okay. And then the MIA, I think his name was it David? Yeah. Just a follow-up question with him would be, is this a bracket, since this is the only, piece of the carriers that are on the exchange, with this group, is that a group that we can add back or start with the limited amount of the 1,400? Do you know offhand? I mean, because obviously the bill, the way it was originally drafted, we like.
Oh, so if the bill as originally drafted were to pass, the MIA, through our authority to enforce federal requirements, we've clarified via bulletin that you can't apply that limit to the markets where the federal government already prohibits it. So we've already taken care of that. So if the limit were added again, we could enforce that. There would be no enforcement challenges, if that was your question.
Yes, for that particular market that does not have the adult coverage currently.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to know. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Delegate Tavares.
It's okay, but it is. Tavares. But the question that I have is, it's concerning that don't people need to be tested in terms of having under a doctor's care so that they can make sure that they have the right fit of the hearing aid? Because if they choose the wrong product, could they not worsen their hearing? I was just, I mean, for me, I thought I think that's an issue of concern. If you're just going over and somebody's just telling you, hey, I got this, and I think it might work for you.
Matt, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. I think there's two ways to look about it. When the FDA decided to enable consumers to buy these products over the counter, there was certainly controversy about that decision. And I think it came from a bunch of healthcare professionals that, yeah, there are carriers and health providers alike that think that it is most appropriate to be done with an audiologist or at the provider level to determine what is the best, not best fit as in your ear, but the best type of device and the best fit for your ear. But we can't do anything about that. The FDA has ruled. So, but yes, Delegate Tavares, there were folks that are uncomfortable with the new format in which consumers can access these devices.
Okay. Delegate Salega, last word on this one.
Thank you. This is for Delegate Tavares. President Biden, October 17th of last year, put out an order that called on the FDA to make hearing aids available over the counter without a prescription. So, that's probably why we're having a lot more conversation about over the counter hearing aids. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to consider, moving this to MHCC. I'll talk with you, Delegate Riley, not after this meeting, but in this week sometime. So we're going to spend 10 minutes on HB 814, which is Health Benefit Exchange, state-based young adult subsidies pilot program, sunset repeal, And Lisa, tell us what it does.
This bill repeals the termination date of the state-based young adult health insurance subsidies pilot program and makes the pilot a permanent program. Subject to the availability of funds in each fiscal year, the exchange may continue as under the pilot program to designate funds from the exchange fund to provide up to 20 million in annual subsidies to young adults under the program. There were amendments that were sent around in a reprint, and the amendments would, instead of terminating the program, extend it for 2 years. They would require the exchange to study federal and state subsidies and whether the 1332 waiver should be amended to add young adults or otherwise maximize federal pass-through funds and impact the most individuals and reduce the state's uninsured rate.
Okay, and Delegate Kerr, the sponsor on this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While we're not opposed to the amendment, I just have a question as to why it was decided that it would be 2 years.
Well, I was thinking that we needed enough time to look at it hopefully outside of COVID, because during the COVID period, the open enrollment was unlimited for like 3 years, and people could enroll in healthcare all 3 years. So everything that we looked at with respect to healthcare in the last 3 years is sort of skewed by that. So I thought we needed a good amount of time to study that. But I do want to, and I have a couple of bills that are looking at expanding healthcare to greater populations, and all of which are going to be affected by the exchange or include the exchange. So what the amendment does is look at this in that context, the young adult subsidy program in that big context, and see what the end result. So I just want to be absolutely clear to everyone. The end result is that we ensure the most people, in fact, ultimately, hopefully all of the people in Maryland, but we want to be able to do it judiciously. Does that make sense, Delegate?
It does. It does. Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, thank you. I see Delegate Tavares's hand and then Mr. Clark. Tavares.
That's a mistake. Sorry, I'll put down my hand.
Okay. Okay. Vinny. Are you on? Yeah, there you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your goal of covering everybody. We love that.
Unfortunately,
this bill.
Vinny, you're going in and out. Is
you hear me?
That I
can
could
hear
just
you.
hear. Okay. We just heard you now when you said, "Can you hear me?" Can you try keep going and see if it stays with you? Because it's really going in and out. And now, Vinny, I think you're frozen. Okay. Stephanie, did you want to pop in while he sees if he can come back in? Stephanie Clapper? Oh, here, Vinny's back in. Let's see if it works now. Okay. Vinny?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair, and we appreciate your goal of covering everyone, and we appreciate that you look at this as one of the potential tools. And we're okay with a time period instead of removing the sunset. We request that you consider making it go through 2028 only because that is the time period of the insurance assessment on which this is funded, and that which is specifically lists the youth subsidies as well as the health equity resource communities and reinsurance as what's funded. So we would urge that you consider, instead of 2026, make it 2028 that it goes through.
And I would say that we'll definitely consider, we're not planning on voting on this today, so let us take that under advisement. And I'm wondering if I saw Johanna. Is Johanna still here?
I'm here.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts, responses on this? On the recommendation to, first of all, on the amendment, and then, the consideration of extending the time?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that COVID and all the challenges that presented have made the last few years kind of weird for studying anything. So that's definitely fair. I think, whether it's a 2-year extension or a further extension, that will give us more data to draw some clearer conclusions. I think giving some additional time would be helpful if the board can always determine, based on our analysis, that the money is better spent in a different way. And so even though the board would have the authority to continue the program if it were through 2028, if we did a report in 2026 and said, we really think there's a better use of this money, there would still be an opportunity to take action. We're not locked into continuing the subsidy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take Delegate Kerr, and then we're going to adjourn for the day, and know that these are, that you will see this bill again. Delegate Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just wanted to point something out to Lisa. I was reading over the amendment, and on page 5 of 7 of the reprint of the bill, down at line 28, we've been using the ages of 18 to 34, but line 28 says 18 to 41.
Oh. Which page?
Page 5, line 28.
That's current law.
So we can start saying 18 to 41?
Joanna, does that have to do with the parameters that you guys set? You could have
Yes.
done it up to 41, but you didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, the law allows the parameters to be up to 40, but given kind of funding constraints and figuring out how we could most wisely spend the money, the board limited the subsidy to up to 34 for the moment.
And I didn't see in the bill where the 34, we don't have to spend time on it now. I can talk to you later about it, Lisa.
Okay, it's not in the law has been the same. It's just that in regulations, probably, Joanna, that's where the 34 appears. It's not in the
Okay.
law.
It's in regulation. Okay, thanks. That explains it.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thanks for the rich discussion on the bills, and the HGO committee will begin its hearings at 1 o'clock. So I will sign off for now. Thank you very much.